AI Realized, the podcast about everything that is new, now, and next for enterprise executives deploying AI. Hosted by myself, Christina Elwood, and my collaborator, David Yakobovich.
Our guests will share what's driving AI adoption, use cases, and business models for the data and AI economy.
Where the future is bright.
Welcome to AI Realized, the podcast for enterprise executives leading AI deployments. From tackling security, data, and operational challenges to navigating organizational transformation, AI deployment offers a unique opportunity to redesign organizations from the inside out. I'm Christina Elwood, your host for today's episode, and we're talking today with Tallulah Le Merle, partner of AI investments at Fifth Era Partners. In addition to being an investor, she's also a fractional executive, a conscious consultant, and helps organizations to navigate change at the intersection of business, technology, and human well-being. For enterprise leaders deploying AI, her perspective offers a fresh lens: how to lead responsibly, engage people in transformation, and ensure adoption is not just fast, but lasting. Tallulah, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's great to be on this.
I'm delighted to have you. And as you are in you focus on bridging business, technology, and human well-being, how do you describe your work to executives who are navigating today's wave of AI disruption?
Yeah, my role now as a partner at Fifth Era, I'm more on the invest side of the equation when it comes to AI, which I can speak about. But my journey to get there, and indeed most of the last decade, was spent working with large corporates and enterprises on these sorts of topics: digital and data transformation, AI strategy, back when it was more machine learning and big data, and nothing like what enterprise leaders are looking at today in terms of, vertical and applied AI is all over the place. There's solutions for every function within their companies, for every industry. So there's a lot of noise. It's a kind of an ocean to wade through. And it's been interesting seeing that from my perspective, because that's where I started my career, was working with them on these sorts of things and how to embed and deploy digital data AI throughout the organization in the right ways and how to go about it strategically. And I can see that it's not easy for these people now to know where to start, how to navigate, how to bring people along the change, whether it's their internal customers, i.e. employees, or external customers. Yeah, I don't necessarily I still am an advisor and sort of strategist on these topics, but my primary hat these days in the invest side of the equation as well.
I'm sure you're investing in companies that are actually selling to these very enterprise executives who are struggling with these challenges. And so when your customer is struggling and you're helping them to address those issues, it's important to understand them from the inside of their organization and as well as from the outside.
Yeah.
So when you're working with startups, it's obviously very different than working with enterprises, but there is a place in your experience where there are common elements.
Mhm.
So when you've worked with FTSE 100 companies and now with scale-ups and visionary companies, what are the lessons from your experiences that apply directly to the enterprise? And then we'll talk about how they apply to your investing.
Yeah. It's interesting because the approach to these things, or kind of the best practice approach, I think, has always been the same. And the problems have always been the same. So the problem is that it's very easy to get excited about technology when you're a large corporate and you're hearing all these things like it's innovate or die, innovate or be left behind, adopt AI, or you'll become obsolete in a few years' time. So that's really sympathize with the types of things that they're hearing. And that's always been the case. So they hear these things, and as a result, they go out and they'll see, maybe they go to a conference or they meet with a startup or scale up, and they get really excited about a new technology and they just want to adopt it quickly. And they may do so. They may procure a license to trial this for a year or so, whatever it may be. But it's a little bit of a scattergun approach, right? It's technology first. It's getting excited about what they see in terms of the solutions and just wanting to go ahead and embed that. And that leads to issues because it's not starting with strategy. It's not leading with a more structured approach for how this is going to be deployed within the organization. And therefore, when it comes to adoption or usage or actually seeing a return from those technologies they've adopted, it's not always there. And that's where big corporates and enterprise leaders, they get disillusioned. They're like, we tried this thing, we spent all this money, in some cases, millions of dollars of budget on technology, and it's not moving the dial in the way we thought it would. We're not where we thought we'd be. And so my work has always been working to flip that equation. And instead of being technology first, it's about being people back or needs back, right? So you start with the needs of, again, either external or internal customers. So the customers you serve are your employees, and it's what are their needs? What are their pain points? What are the biggest areas where we're leaking value today, or we have really manual, laborious processes that are just taking so much time and energy and capital as an organization, and being very strategic about it and understanding where those value pools are within the organization. And then for any given one of those, so say it's like a back office function, say it's in finance where we have all these really, again, slow, long processes and period end reporting and all these sorts of things. For that specific value pool area, it's then getting clear on specific use cases and then going out and really diligencing what are all of the best tools and solutions that would meet this need that I have as an organization. And having that be not being afraid to spend time in that process and looking at the best solutions, because especially when it comes to AI, there's a lot of wrapper solutions that have been built, right? There's at least 10 teams building for any enterprise use case. And many of them, there's a market now. So they're not to be disparaging against the teams, but that's what we're seeing. So spending time in that diligencing process is really important. And I would also say it's okay to be a fast follower. You don't need to be a first mover in adopting tech, especially when we're seeing the scale and pace of innovation that we've never seen before. It's okay to look at who our competitors using or other similar organizations in other industries, and why don't we try that ourselves once it's been a little bit more tested and proven. And then the last thing I'll say is then once you have chosen what these solutions are going to be, it's a tale as old as time that when it comes to technology, people want to focus on, again, the tech, the solution, the platform, the software. They don't love to think about and I hate to say like the softer sides of the equation, but it's the change management, the capabilities uplift in the organization, helping employees in functions understand, what does this mean for me? How is it going to change my day-to-day role? How does it change the way I'm incentivized to grow within my role? Nominating champions within different functions. You can find your emerging, rising stars or emerging talent who maybe are excited to get hands-on with this technology. Make them a champion. Make them responsible for being a supercharged hybrid human AI employee and making these solutions fit for purpose for your company, and then going out and teaching others within the organization about it and bringing people along the journey. It's so critical because this MIT report that came out talking about 90% of organizations aren't getting the return on investment they would have expected from their AI investments. I think it's not a problem with the technology and the promise of the technology. It's a problem with the deployment of it. And that largely comes down to getting the usage and adoption that you desire from these things. And other complexities too, right? Like ROI is hard to measure when you're talking mostly about augmentation of roles rather than fully replacing them at this stage because of where we are with it and the solutions themselves. So anyway, I've spoken for a while about that. I'll pause for a second, but those are some of the things that were applicable before AI had its coming of age moment in the past few years and are still very much applicable today.
Yeah, I think we're certainly hearing this from our community of executives that right now it's not really about the technology. The technology is more than they can absorb as it stands today. It's actually about the people. It's about the transformation of the organization, the upskilling, et cetera, as you pointed out. So if our biggest challenge is in the organization and not in the technology, how does that play out in the opportunities for the startups that are trying to sell technology to these companies? Is this a moment of buy versus build, as opposed to maybe if a year ago it was more about build? Or is it the type of product that they're going to look to buy in order to make adoption the priority rather than deployment?
Yeah. The teams building, there's not much incentive for them to really worry about how it gets deployed within the organization. They may start to consider, are there services on their side that they offer to help employees get up to speed with the tool itself or helping with the capabilities uplift within the organization. I think there's an interesting point for enterprise leaders to think strategically about who they want to be in the era of AI. What is the mission and vision of their organization? Who do they become? And what do they want to stand for? And that requires the leadership team to also have a relatively high degree of literacy on AI themselves, right? And to be able to almost envision futures so they can work backwards from that. I think, I know that's not necessarily in direct address to your question, but I also think there was a flurry of activity in the past couple of years with enterprises adopting the McKinsey State of AI report last year said 80% of organizations are adopting AI at scale now in 3 or more functions. It's no longer just an experimental thing that they're doing. As a result of some of the rhetoric and promise versus reality when it comes to having to deploy it in the organization, there may be a little bit of a cool down, which I think is necessary as organizations start to be a little bit more strategic about how this is actually going to look for them. And I don't think that's a bad thing. It also means that on the side of the startups, scale ups, et cetera, who are building these solutions, a lot of the quote unquote tourist interest and tourist capital exits the scene, which means that only the top technical builders and teams who have really designed for longevity and scale and have very strategically thought about the type of solutions that they're offering, those are the ones that remain, which is a good thing. So I envision a lot of the noise coming down to an extent.
What do you see as the biggest blind spots leaders encounter when they're driving tech transformation?
What was some of the things we mentioned? Getting excited about technology first instead of needs first, not approaching it strategically from the very top of what's our mission and vision and what we want to stand for when it comes to digitizing or our core business. And therefore, how does that flow into value pools and then solutions? The change and capability side of the equation.
What do you see as the biggest blind spots that leaders encounter when driving technology transformation?
Yeah, I think it's a number of the things that I mentioned in terms of the pain points, getting excited about technology first rather than needs first, not necessarily approaching this strategy first. Often as well, when it comes to digital or data or AI, anything technology related, sometimes the push is given to IT or to different silos of the organization to figure this out themselves. And especially now more than ever, I think it's critical to have a chief AI officer or chief, we used to say chief digital and data officer at the exco level reporting directly to the CEO. This has to be cross-functional. It has to be thought of right from the top and then trickle down across functions, across countries or opcos, however the business is operating. It can't happen bottom up. It can't happen in silos of a lot of the solutions maybe are function specific, but even, and then the other thing I would say is, and it's fled me again. It's such a good point that I'm wanting to make, and then it goes. I don't.
When it comes back, we'll find a way to weave it in.
Yeah.
What practices and other practices and structures besides maybe the appointment of a chief AI officer help teams adapt faster and more sustainably when disruptive technologies like AI enter the organization in your experience?
Having a really incredible strategy from the top that everyone's aligned about and can get behind that is visionary, not in terms. So here's another interesting point. When it comes to AI, everyone's talking about efficiency and productivity, i.e., reducing cost. And that's often where most of the enterprise adoption right now is probably for those sorts of angles. But there's a huge opportunity for organizations now to also think about top line growth and how they can entirely new business and revenue models and opportunities for them to serve their customers in entirely new ways and or get to market faster if they have like very slow multi-month R&D processes that slows them from getting to market with new products and offerings. AI provides massive opportunity to speed that up. That's a generalization, but across every industry, that's broadly true. Agentic AI is something that will almost be a paradigm shift away from software as a service and allow them, in theory, to engage with endless and number of customers in real time in their language 24/7, et cetera. So there's real opportunity here, but it requires strategy. And again, I keep making that point of like top down, cross functional, whole leadership teams to get behind it and be very cohesive in terms of what this means and bring people in their organization along the journey. There's a lot of fear about AI replacing jobs, and understandably, because there's a lot of already solutions that will augment what people do. But the truth is, everyone underestimates inertia. This shift will be much more gradual than what we're hearing. The Goldman Sachs report that looked into this suggests that the peak unemployment effect will only be 0.5 points. So to put that in context, the last recession was 5 points and COVID was around 11 or 11 and a half because that was such an abrupt furloughing or almost overnight. So this will be very gradual and it's more about augmentation of roles. It's more about hybrid AI roles and career paths in future. And then people focus on the 70 million or so jobs that could be replaced by AI by 2030. In that same WEF report, they're anticipating around 160 million new jobs to be created as a result of this technology. Similar to the internet, it's like entire industries arose because of the internet that never existed before. And indeed, we use it in almost everything we do today when it comes to corporate work. I think communicating these sorts of messages to employees, my platform, as you mentioned, is massively at the intersection of AI and humanity. I talk a lot about the case for hope in the age of AI, and I address a lot of these perceptions. And while we're lucid about the risks and that there's a job transition to navigate and that there's risk, we haven't even talked about risks around safety and security and data privacy, cognitive offloading, bias and inference in the model. There's a whole swathe of things here, let alone the macro risks when it comes to impact on humanity. But there's also really smart teams addressing those. There's a precedent for this historically with the internet and cloud and mobile and other kind of disruptive technology evolution, revolution, whatever you want to call it, that we've seen in past. And it will be more gradual. Again, when you've worked with corporates for a long time, you understand there's inertia when it comes to these things.
Tallulah, you mentioned something else that I think is really important to pull the thread to pull on here in this discussion. You mentioned that there's this top line opportunity to grow. So the efficiency savings that we're realizing can be deployed in a number of ways. You can use that to invest in new markets and new products and new opportunities. What are you seeing across industries for that reinvestment? Are they reinvesting in their people, new markets, and new products, or are they putting that savings to the bottom line and into the pockets of the shareholders?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit too early to be able to make sweeping statements about that's only really in the past couple of years that we're seeing enterprise AI adoption really boom. And again, they haven't necessarily been seeing those returns yet to be able to make strategic decisions about what to do with them. But I think the right answer will differ by organization, and that's really a choice they can make. There will be more and more, again, the focus has been on taking cost out of cutting costs and these sorts of things, but there is the opportunity to really drive top line growth. And that's where you can also reabsorb individuals whose roles do get augmented or whatever this may be. So I think having a strategy that involves both also makes a much more compelling case that you can communicate to employees and say, yes, we will be augmenting or replacing some of this manual data entry or very manual, slow, cumbersome processes. But by the way, who as a kid raised their hand and said, that's what I want to be when I grow up? A lot of that work to me doesn't really dignify the human experience, that we sit there on screens all day doing these kind of low imagination, low creativity type roles. So if we can offload some of that to a tool that can do it much more efficiently and eventually more intelligently than we can, what does that free up? Time, energy, resource, people's unlocks their potential to do other things. And if an organization can communicate that, we want to move into X space, we want to offer these new offerings that are supported, facilitated by the power of AI. That's really compelling for people and brings people along a journey and helps them understand what may happen to them now, but also where they're going.
So AI allows us to move faster. So we get velocity, we get some empowerment for more creative endeavors. What are you personally most excited about in the intersection of this technology and human development?
I'm so excited about many things, and I know I would say it's what I mentioned, that if you look on a macro level, and again, I'm very lucid about the risks and the pain of the job transition and navigating that. But there's an opportunity to, in the information age, we work in this 9 to 5 kind of Fortean model, but on screens all day, where we're disconnected from ourselves, from our bodies, from community, from nature. We spend 9 times more time on screens than out in nature on average. And to me, that's the dystopia. So what does it mean when you disrupt this model? It's an open question. It's one I discuss and find myself engaged with often. I love the fact that when ChatGPT 5 came out recently, there was this big, not uproar, but there was quite a backlash because it didn't have the same tone and texture and feel of interacting with the user that 4 had. And so while everyone's been using AI for efficiency and productivity solutions like we've discussed, there was suddenly this little bit of an eye-opening moment that, wow, there are actually people are using this technology also to feel seen and heard and validated in a way that they haven't before. And so it's almost what's coming to light now are the emotional use cases of AI, and not just as a sidekick or a coach or sycophantic AI, which is something we hear about, but deep emotional needs that can be met and for which we can start to build for. And what I find promising about that is then the best place people to build for those use cases are not necessarily technologists, deeply technical experts, et cetera, but it's the people who understand the needs. And those are creatives, caregivers, right brainers, social scientists, psychologists, neurodivergent people who deeply understand the needs. And so that's one of the things I'm most excited about is almost entirely new product solutions and possibly even industries arising at this intersection. But also the fact that it ties to my greatest fear, which is that those people I mentioned are right now leaning out of this dialogue because they fear that this technology won't ultimately be good for humanity because of all the real risks we see right now. And that's why this platform, that Case for Hope, and that I find myself almost incidentally fell into it and I'm talking about. But I think it's one of the most important things is just, yes, there's a lot of real risk right now. The trajectory could go many ways, but unless we have the right people who care about these things leaning in, and for me, that's the real key to ensuring we keep moving in the right direction.
So, as we wrap up today, what is the guidance that you have for executives who are early in their adoption journey?
My guidance is come together as a leadership team, get on the same page about AI in terms of literacy and understanding, and for whatever your industry is specifically, educate yourselves first and then put a stake in the ground strategically. Who do you want to be in that sort of future? What do you think you stand for? Think about the value pools across the organization from efficiency, productivity through to the top line growth we mentioned. Look strategically at what solutions there exist today across the board. Don't be afraid to be a fast follower in some of those areas. Trial things. Don't commit to massive 1 year licenses. Do a month or so. Be nimble. It's like this agile ways of working thing everyone always used to talk about. But trial things out and nominate and empower people within your organization to become champions of the change. Think very carefully about capabilities uplift. And it's not holding their hand, but it's help them understand what this is going to mean for your employees.
Also, you mentioned bring these other thinkers to the table, the people who do have an deep understanding of the human side of it. Make sure they have a seat at the table as well.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. What resources can you recommend to listeners who want to learn more about you and your work?
I'm happy to connect. I'm on LinkedIn. That's probably the best one-stop shop. It has links to my website and podcasts. We have the first fully AI generated news show on AI. It's daily and it's 15 minutes or less, but it's my AI twin delivers it. So it sounds like me, but it's actually AI me. And she's very savvy and smart. But I think for leaders, we do on Wednesdays, it's Workforce Wednesday. So that talks about enterprise AI and what some of the key organizations are doing and how they're thinking about this. Every day has a different theme. So that's an interesting one. My day hat, which we haven't spoken about at all, is as an investor. We work with the best VCs in the space to get access, and we do select direct and co-investments. But at later stage, we talk to institutional investors quite often who are interested in our strategy and getting access to early stage AI because it allows them to have insight into what's happening early stage in this ecosystem. And we play that role as well ourselves as an intermediary between what's hot in the ecosystem and what corporates and enterprises care about and need to know about. I didn't talk about that hat at all, but that's something I'm more than happy to talk to enterprise leaders about too.
Sure. And as a leader yourself, in this AI revolution, what's your defining edge in guiding AI leaders?
I like that question. Me personally, but also our firm, many of us were former consultants or worked with and advised large corporates at some point in our career. So we really bridge the world of big enterprises and corporates and the world of fast-paced innovation, cutting-edge tech. That's always been our sweet spot. We understand the needs of both. We understand the vantage points and perspectives of both and what matters to them. So we bridge that. I spent the last 12 years in UK and France, but I'm back now in Silicon Valley Bay Area where I also grew up. So again, I understand even geographically, we have that diversity of understanding. And then it's this, our name, Fifth Era, is talking about the fifth era of human evolution. We were hunter gatherers, agrarians, industrialists, now in this information era and moving into whatever comes next, this fifth era of human evolution. We care deeply about that intersection of technology and humanity, of innovation and what it means for the way we live our lives, work, interact, etc. So I would say that's the third, is just being squarely a bridge between, corporate and startup, geographies, investors and builders, and technology and humanity.
I love that. So thank you, Tallulah, so much for joining us today. We really appreciate you being on the show, and we hope to see you soon. I know you're gonna be at AI Realize Summit on November the 5th.
Yep. I will be moderating a panel on many of the things we discussed today. So thanks so much.
Excellent. Thank you. We really appreciate your time today.